Hey, how's everybody doing today? On this beautiful Wednesday, I'd just like to reflect with you a little bit on Easter, which is coming up this Sunday. It's one of the most important, if not the most important day of celebration as Christians. But this year, of course, it's going to be and feel a little different than it usually does. All of us have traditions that are really important to us, things we treasure, especially on days like Easter Sunday morning. I think about when I was a child. I grew up in a church where there was a brass band that played Christ the Lord is Risen Today, and we had a big pancake breakfast in the church basement. All kinds of family traditions, including the Easter Bunny and finding chocolate eggs and all of those good things. And this year, I'm sure, like me, many of you had plans that now have been upended because of all the social distancing. Our family was going to all gather here. My sister's family and my parents were going to come up, and now that's not possible. And you're probably feeling some of that too. You're thinking, how is Easter this year going to feel like Easter with these things that we normally do, we normally celebrate and really enjoy, not being possible? But sometimes having our traditions that are good, having them upended, kind of sidelined for a while, can be helpful. I think about two Easters in my life that were very unusual that kind of remind me of this year. One of them was during the Gulf War, back in 1991. I was in Saudi Arabia with an army unit in the middle of the desert as Easter was approaching. And I remember we had almost nothing of what we usually have in order to celebrate Easter. None of our families were there. We had no church choir. A few of us gathered for a sunrise service on the top of a rise in the middle of the desert. As the sun came up, someone had made a cross out of two pieces of wood and erected it on the top of that hill, and simply using a Bible, praying and singing and reading the Easter story, we remembered Jesus' resurrection. Stands out as a special memory for me. Another special memory happened a couple of years before that when I was a student at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Now you'd think, wow, Jerusalem for Easter Sunday morning, how cool is that? And it was, in a sense, because those of us from the university who were Christians, we walked about 2 miles in the darkness, just like those women walked in the darkness on the way to the tomb. And we had a worship service with other Christians in town near the site that they believe was the garden tomb talked about in the Gospels. And that was special, of course, because of the location. But that service was utterly unlike any Easter service I'd experienced growing up. There weren't traditional hymns like we knew. It was Middle Eastern. But we were forced to focus on the story, on the reality of Jesus, who had been crucified just days before now, being raised from the dead, and the glory of that morning. And even though my traditions that I prized for Easter were not there at all, it held a very special, meaningful place at that time and continues to in my memory. So those are two instances of very unusual Easters, where nothing that seemed normal was happening. And yet, because all of those traditions were stripped away, it brought the poignancy of the resurrection story into sharper focus. And that's kind of what this Sunday is going to be for us too. I guarantee you'll never forget this Easter Sunday. You're going to do maybe a pancake breakfast with your family, or maybe by yourself in your home. Hopefully you'll be tuning in to our live stream at 10:30 as we worship together. And many of the things that we usually do are not going to be there. But the one thing, the most important thing, will. And that is celebrating what Easter is all about, Jesus, the risen King. Let me read these familiar verses from Matthew 28. Now after the Sabbath, toward the dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene, the other Mary, went to see the tomb. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven, rolled back the stone, and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning. His clothes were white as snow. Fear of the guards made them like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. He's not here, he's risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell the disciples that he is risen from the dead." That's what Easter Sunday is all about. And though it's going to feel kind of unusual this Sunday, it's going to be special. It's going to be memorable. Let's make it all about Jesus, our risen King.